Hello, hello, my name is Dove. If you are new here, then welcome. If you are returning, then welcome back, and also I love you. I do wish the camera showed more so that you could see that, number one, I'm wearing a giant red skirt because today we're going to be talking about the Covey, and I wanted to dress the part, but number two, there is a cat in my lap. He did join me right as I was about to start recording this. I think I'm just going to show you, let me get my phone out here, and it can be a B-roll camera. There he is. Say hello. Say hello, Abraham. Are you a good boy? Oh my goodness. So happy. Such big purrs. I hope you can hear those purrs. I don't know if they'll come across on camera. Anyways, getting down to business here. Today we are going to be starting a new series alongside my District Deep Dive series. I promise I'm still working on those. By the time this is on YouTube, I will already have started working on the research for our next District Deep Dive, which will be District 7. That's what won the poll on Patreon, so not to worry. But I am going to start this other series because if you are well versed in any type of literature, botany, Roman history, or if you're just a big fan of the series like I am, you probably have noticed how meticulous Suzanne Collins is about naming her characters. I keep saying that I needed to make a whole separate video about them to unpack the intricacies of that, but even that felt too overwhelming and too wide of a scope to focus on. Hence, new series, I'm going to be splitting the cast of characters into much more manageable portions. The idea behind this was I was like, oh, this will be a fun series to do alongside. It'll be shorter. Everybody point and laugh. Everybody point and laugh at the bitch who thought that she could make videos shorter than an hour and a half. Hello, this is future me checking in. I'm almost done editing this video. That took so much longer than expected. Everybody point and laugh because she thought it would only be an hour and a half. Girl, it took me so much longer to edit than I had anticipated. I have surgery in 2 days, so I'm really trying to finish it and get it up. So sorry. Also, I lied. I have not started the research for District 7, but it's okay. So especially with our new information that we have about District 12, as well as the surprisingly personal coincidence that I have with what Hamish's girlfriend's name happens to be, why not start with the Covey? So in this video, we're going to talk about each member of the Covey, their namesake ballad, and the color. And then we're going to discuss the narrative parallels and symbolism, and then explore some selected audios that accompany their songs. As of recording this, I'm not exactly sure how much audio I'm going to be able to put directly in the video because of copyright stuff, but I'm going to have a playlist to go along with it, so you guys will be able to hear what I'm talking about either way. There are going to be some very minor spoilers for Sunrise on the Reaping, but nothing having to do with the plot. It's just going to have some mention to some lore that was revealed in the book. I really hope that you guys stick around to the end because for the most part, I feel like the narratives of the characters actually just get more and more interesting as they go. I definitely feel a lot more connected to the Covey now than I did when I started researching this, especially with some of the characters that we don't really talk as much about. There are a couple of sneaker hits that I was not expecting to shed real tears over. Guys, I cried multiple times working on the research and the script for this video. I also have a special surprise to share with you guys at the very end. It's something that feels very vulnerable for me to be putting on the internet, but I hope you're going to appreciate it nonetheless. That said, please promise me that you'll watch the whole video before you get there, because as much as there's not, no, I'm not going to bust into your house and yell at you if you skip to it, but it's not gonna hit as hard if you don't have all of the context leading up to it, okay? So it's think of it as a reward for getting through the rest of the video. And we're gonna dive in. I just gotta give my little spiel here first, which is that if this is the type of content you like to see, yada yada, go ahead and subscribe, leave a comment, share with a friend. I always love hearing from you guys, and it really helps me get noticed by the YouTube algorithm so that more people can see my work and I can continue to sustain doing this, because it does take a lot of time and energy, and I do have a full-time job. So with all of that, we are going to dive in. So to start, as a refresher, the Covey have a very specific naming convention that is unlike anybody else in the series, although obviously there are a lot of themes that we can pick up on different naming conventions, but this one has a formula. So all the members of the Covey have a double-barreled name where the first part of that name is taken from a traditional ballad, and the second part of that name is a color. For the in-world explanation, this is attributed to the Covey's cultural heritage as previously traveling musicians and storytellers, and then their particular love of color and beautiful things, both material and then within the natural world. But from more of like a meta storytelling perspective, the choices of each of those names are deliberate and they illuminate aspects of a particular character regarding their role within the story, their character actions and arcs, their general demeanor, and any themes that they're meant to represent. In the book, The Green Mantle of Romanticism by Christine Avery and Michael Colebrook, which by the way was a really great skim read, and I wish I had more time to cover some of the other stuff that they talked about in it, they explore the philosophies of some of the standout romantics, some of which actually wrote ballads that we're going to cover today. But they have this great quote that feels so relevant to what we'll be discussing, which is, Jonathan Bates poses the question, what are poets for? He goes on to suggest, could it be to remind the next few generations that it is we who have the power to determine whether the earth will sing or be silent? As earth's own poetry is drowned ever deeper, so there will be an ever greater need to retain a place in culture for the song that names the earth. The first big section that we're going to be looking at is all of the Bairds. There are 4 of them. So I made this family tree for my bingo update video, but I have changed a couple of minor things. As a quick refresher, the 3 girls from Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, which are Lucy Gray, Maude Ivory, and Barb Azure, are all cousins sharing the last name Baird. I'd originally had Barb Azure as Burdock's mom, but somebody pointed out in the comments that she's more likely his grandmother based on her age, which I totally agree with. And then one other thing, when I initially made the family tree, I had all of their parents be sisters, because that just felt right to me. But realistically, they have the same last name, so it would be their fathers. Their fathers would have been brothers. But let's talk about that surname for a moment, because does Baird sound like anything else to you? Perhaps pointing to a background of a skilled performer or musician, you know, like a bard. The word bard is actually Scottish Gaelic, and it means a poet or performer of ballads. And actually in the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, which is going to be, normally when I shorten that book name, I just call it Ballad. I can't do that in this video because it gets way too confusing. So I'm going to be referring to it by its full government name, Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, every time I say it, because Tobosis, I'm going to get caught up on my S's and it's going to be bad and I'm going to have to do a million takes. So we're doing full Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. Okay, but we are explicitly told in that book which 3 ballads the Baird cousins are named after.
You yet may spy the fawn at play, or the hair upon the green, but the sweet face of Lucy Gray will never more be seen.
So we're going to start off with Lucy Gray, and because we know her the best of all of the Covey members, at least leading into Sunrise on the Reaping, I'm going to comparatively zoom through hers a little bit because we do have a pretty comprehensive understanding of her story and how the ballad relates to her straight from the book. Like that's actually just part of the text is we discuss it and we think about it. And of course we know that Lucy Gray is the only one of the Covey whose ballad provides both parts of her name. It's the song and the color contained within the ballad. Her name comes from the William Wordsworth poem of the same name. So as we know, her ballad tells the story of a young girl who was sent on an errand by her father to bring a lantern to her mother in town so that they can both get home safely through a storm that's meant to hit later that night. Tonight will be a stormy night. You to the town must go, and take a lantern, child, to light your mother through the snow. That, father, I will gladly do. 'Tis scarcely afternoon, The minster clock has just struck 2, and yonder is the moon. Though Lucy Gray is sent off in the early afternoon, the storm comes in early, and she gets lost, never making it to her destination. Her parents search for her through the night, following her footsteps far and wide, only to find them suddenly disappear midway across the bridge that they can clearly see from their house. The wretched parents, all that night, went shouting far and wide, but there was neither sound nor sight to serve them for a guide. At daybreak on the hill they stood that overlooked the moor, and thence they saw the bridge of wood a furlong from their door. And now they homeward turned and cried, "In heaven we shall meet," when in the snow the mother spied the print of Lucy's feet. Then downward from the steep hill's edge they tracked the footmarks small, and through the broken hawthorn hedge, and by the long stone wall. And then an open field they'd crossed, the marks were still the same, they'd tracked them on, nor ever lost, and to the bridge they came. They followed from the snowy bank their footmarks one by one, into the middle of the plank, and further there were none. But they never end up finding a body, or a lantern, or even a lost mitten, or a scarf, or really any solid proof that she has died, though that is the safest assumption to make. Instead, the ending is ambiguous. Yet some maintain that to this day she is a living child, that you may see sweet Lucy Gray upon the lonesome wild. This ballad is, of course, a pretty on-the-nose reference to the narrative arc of our own Lucy Gray, who ventures off into a rainstorm and vanishes from Coriolanus, who attempts to track her down after the trust has eroded between them upon the discovery of the guns that were used to kill Mayfair and Billy Taupe, as well as the admission and really poor cover-up lie that he killed more people than she knew about. And I will say, one thing that bothers me about Coriolanus is, for being such a technically smart person, he really is an idiot. And I'm not saying that as a criticism of his character, because frankly, I think that's a very accurate to life. Like, that's how people are. But like, didn't anybody ever tell him that the best way to lie is to tell as much of the truth as possible? Like, all he needed to say is that he felt like Sejanus's death was his fault. She wouldn't have even questioned it. He also could have said the same thing for Billy Taupe. Like, either would have been an acceptable answer. I digress. Coriolanus follows her tracks in the mud for as long as he can, until, like the Lucy Gray of the ballad, her footsteps simply vanish and she's never seen again. Gray is a very fitting color for her in both narratives, that of the book and in the poem. Lucy Gray exists between two worlds. She's between the living and the dead, between the known and the unknown. She's not district or capital, she's Covey. Her actions through the book take on ambiguous motives when you examine them outside of Snow's black or white perspective. It's a mystery that none of us will know the answer to, but it also doesn't really matter in the end, because the outcome is still the same. She is a ghost that will haunt the narrative for at least the next 66 years. So for the actual musical reference, we of course have the beautiful version of Lucy Gray that was sung by Rachel Zegler for the movie, but there really aren't all that many examples of this particular ballad outside of that. I did find one lovely version from 2015 put out by the artist Emmett Franz, and my favorite rendition outside of the one from the film. And then another one that I really enjoyed was released by a professor of philosophy at Oxford named Paul Lodge in 2022 as part of an album featuring a few other ballads by Wordsworth. His voice isn't the strongest, but I find his singing quite endearing, and the melody that he chose feels appropriately melancholic and bittersweet to match the content. I really enjoyed it. I love just anybody putting art out into the world, even if it's not perfect. That brings me joy. Again, if possible, I will be putting clips of the music throughout, but if you are hearing me talk about it right now, it's because I probably couldn't do that as much as I wanted to. So, all the music has been put in a playlist, and here is the link for that. You can listen to it later, or you can open up another tab and listen as we go. I think that might be a fun way to do this as well.
It was all in the month of June, when all things they were blooming. Sweet William on his deathbed lay, for the love of Barbary Allen.
Moving on to our next Baird cousin, we're going to be talking about Barb Azure. What we know of Barb Azure is still very minimal, but was expanded upon with the release of Sunrise on the Reaping. When I say that, we actually don't get any direct reference to Barb Azure in Sunrise on the Reaping. She is not mentioned. She is not present in the Covey cemetery. She isn't anywhere, but rather there's the implication that Burdock, who we do get to know about, is her descendant. But honestly, because we know Barb Azure the least, I think it's nice that we, like the collective we, referring to the documented history, happen to know her namesake ballad the best. As mentioned in the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, she was named for Barbara Allen, which is child ballad number 84. I gotta talk about child ballads for a second. Child ballads and their numbers are referencing the works collected by the American scholar and folklorist Francis James Child. The primary focus of his work was compiling the many variations of Scottish and English ballads from various sources. So his focus was primarily on collecting all of the literature and lyrics so you could examine them side by side, not necessarily the music or the melody. We're going to talk about other people for that because they were very instrumental in preserving that aspect of it. When combining his work with the work of these other historians and song catchers and musicologists, whatever they like to call themselves, because a lot of them have very similar jobs, but they prefer different terms, which I personally think song catcher is the most fun. And also, I did watch the 2000 masterpiece Songcatcher while I was researching for all of this, and can I just say, Aidan Quinn, you have never looked sexier. Aidan Quinn, if you need a fourth wife, let me know.
I have never been anywhere where the music is as much a part of life as it is here. It's beautiful. Come with me.
I'm a jinx for a woman, Millie.
I'm not your average woman.
There are plenty of other very notable scholars and archivists of these ballads as well, including ones that are still alive and working, like Steve Roud. I would say the Roud catalog and index, honestly, is the most comprehensive of all of them because it collects everything. Like all of the work of the other scholars who have come before, it's all included in the Roud index. It has almost 250,000 references to over 25,000 different folk songs from around the world, which is really cool. But anyway, the child ballads are pretty much some of the most prominent ballads in the genre, and we're actually going to be talking about 4 of them in this video. Is that right? Hold on. Yeah, 4 of them. Anyways, the reason that we know the ballad Barbara Allen so well is because it has been one of the most popular ballads in the genre since it was first performed. It has a surprisingly few variations there's still quite a few variations because by nature, folk songs go crazy. There's a million versions of all of them. But compared to some of the other ones that I was looking into, this one really doesn't have all that much variation. It's a little bit of lyrical choices. Maybe they added a stanza, maybe they took one out, and then there are 3 to 5 regular melodies that are pretty much used across the board, which that sounds like a lot of variations, and it is, but not in comparison. The ballad tells a story of a woman named Barbara Allen who is called upon by the servant of a man, sometimes referred to as Sweet William. William is ill and dying and wishes to see the face of the woman that he loves one last time before he dies. Barbara Allen then goes to see him on his deathbed, where she is closed off, knowing there is nothing that she can do. And though he proclaims his love for her, she does not say the same in return, and he soon dies. Barbara Allen, who feels sorrow over the loss and despair over not opening her heart to him fully while she had the chance, asks to see him again before he's buried. She then weeps over his body and tells her mother to dig her own grave, for her love has died and she will soon follow. Alternatively, in some versions, it's guilt that consumes her, not grief, because she never actually returned his feelings. Also, on the name pronunciation, yes, her name is technically Barbara Allen. However, I already know this song, going into this, and a lot of the American versions, the traditional American folk versions, pronounce it as Barbry Allen. And so I'm gonna mess up. I'm gonna say Barbry Allen because that's how I would sing it.
Easy to say, hard-hearted Barbie Allen.
it's from guilt or grief or sorrow and a broken heart. Barbara Allen does end up dying soon after, and the two of them are buried next to each other in the churchyard, where from William's grave grows a rose, and from Barbara Allen's a briar. These two plants grow as high as the church wall, tangling together and forming a true love's knot, showing that if they weren't together in life, at least they can be in death. Now, of course, something of note is that we actually get to see the Covey graveyard in Sunrise on the Reaping, deep in the forest, where, quite notably, Barb Azure is not among the buried. And this could mean two things. Number one, either Barb Azure is still alive, which, to be clear, is possible. Like, by my best estimate, she'd only be around 60, which we know that it's not common for people to get that old, but arguably 60 is still relatively young. It's possible that she's alive. Or she's dead. But if she is dead, she would be probably buried in the normal cemetery, presumably next to her lover, because that's what her ballad is about. And in this case, especially with the pattern that you're going to see very quickly established between the Covey and their name ballads, I'm going to say it is most likely the latter of the two. But backing up for just a second, there is one thing that we do know about Barb Azure from Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, and that's that she was dating a lady and not a man. For once, the Covey left their instruments behind. Barb Azure stayed at home too, to keep an eye on things. She sent them off with a bucket containing a jug of water, a loaf of bread, and an old blanket. She just started seeing a gal down the road, confided Lucy Gray, when they were out of earshot of the house, probably glad to have the place to themselves for a day. In regards to having a child, I like to think that Barb Azure could be a bisexual queen, and things just didn't work out with that girl. She met somebody else, she fell in love, happened to be a man. Love that for her. I hope that's the case for her sake. Okay. Equally possible is the fact that she too could be a victim of homophobia, which is revealed to us in Sunrise on the Reaping via Clerk Carmine's story, which we're going to talk about way later. This is a quote from page 13 in Sunrise on the Reaping. I once told Lenore Dove I thought he just hated love. That's when she revealed that he'd been together some 30 years with a fellow in town who replaces busted windows. They have to keep it quiet because loving differently can get you harassed by peacekeepers, fired from jobs, arrested even. Here's the thing. Either option is entirely possible, and either interpretation fits into the text, both the book and the ballad. So I'm going to talk about this relationship, and then it's up to you to decide if this is actually about the father of her child, or if it is about the girl that maybe she didn't get to live her life with. So here's a little more detail from the actual ballad.
Oh, she was buried 'neath the old church tower, and he was buried on higher, and out of his bosom grew a red, red rose. Out of Aubrey's grew a green briar. They grew and they grew up the old church tower until they could grow no higher. They locked and tied in a true lover's knot, red rose wrapped around the green briar.
The inclusion of this true lover's knot implies to me that she did have genuine feelings for this person, and her color, azure, provides more evidence of this. Azure as a color represents calmness, tranquility, and freedom. And thanks to one of my YouTube commenters, shout out, I was made aware of another connection, which is botanical in nature. So again, I am going to be breaking this series down in clumps. So I'm going to have a whole video about the Everdeens and the plant symbolism and all of that. We don't have time to unpack it all, but there is a species of plant called Eryngium azure, I think that's how you would say that, which is a blue thistle plant. In other words, a briar, or in other words, a barb. That's right, it is a triple pun. Yeah. Suzanne, you're incredible. And then, of course, this plant also happens to be in the clade, the family of astrids, which, number one, Katniss's mom's name, number two, also includes burdock. So, we're really hammering home the point here that Barb Azure is the connection to the Covey in the Everdeens. We know that the loss of Lucy Gray was devastating to the Covey, so I don't think it's much of a stretch that Barb Azure, who already had one foot rooted in a life that extends beyond the Covey, would have wanted to escape that grief and find peace beyond her own family. But rather that the losses made her more aware of the fleeting nature of life than ever before, and the importance of living it to the fullest while you can, just like in her ballad. The lives of the Covey continued to be more and more repressed. They were silenced and made to feel unsafe. Barb Azure was seeking more, a life that she could live as wide and open and freely as the cloudless sky in her name. And in the end, I do believe that she found it in some form or another. So to sum it up, I personally think that Barb Azure found a way to be content with life. I do think that she was a lesbian, and I do think that the point of her ballad is to illustrate the fact that though she found a decent life with somebody who was a man, had a family, I think ultimately perhaps her and this woman were in the end regretful of the fact that by circumstance they weren't able to spend their life together. So at the very least they could be buried next to each other and live the life beyond together. And there's a lot to talk about when it comes to the way that death is handled in Sunrise on the Reaping in particular, like the concept of death, the weight of it. And I actually really appreciate that that is a conversation in the book. I got a few comments in my reaction videos on Patreon as I was going through because I did discuss Hamish's sort of reckoning with the concept of death. And I like that there's a bit of a contrast between the way that he thinks of it and the way that Lenore Dove thinks of it, and how they are both able to find their peace in their own interpretations. I personally was raised evangelical, and the concept of eternity and like eternal life and forever terrified me. That did not give me any type of peace. For me, a final rest has brought me the peace that eternal life never could. And I think Barb Azure and her love, at the very least, got to have their final rest together. And I think that's beautiful.
Oh my darling, oh my darling, oh my darling Clementine, you are lost and gone forever, dreadful sorry Clementine.
So this section is actually going to be about Maude Ivory, but bear with me because I need to go on a brief tangent about Lenore Dove. Please don't eat my mic. He's about to try to, no, no, you can't eat my mic. No, please stop. Dude! Are you back? Okay. Something I've been surprised about is just how many people don't feel as though Maude Ivory is actually Lenore Dove's mother. And this has been further complicated by the recent casting of Whitney Peak as Lenore Dove for the movie, who does vaguely resemble Rachel Zegler in like her eyebrows and her lip shape. But, by the way, very excited about that casting. I think she's going to be fantastic. But personally, there's not a doubt in my mind that Maude Ivory is Lenore Dove's mother. I feel like it's all but said. So Lenore Dove is Hamish's age, either 15 or 16 years old. And we can work backwards here because we know that Maude Ivory is only 8 years old during the 10th Hunger Games, which means that she would have been 32 at the time of Lenore Dove's birth. With the primitive nature of healthcare in District 12 combined with the older age of pregnancy, this makes her like the prime candidate for complications at birth that result in maternal death. Modern healthcare has made older pregnancies so much safer than they used to be, but in places where you don't have access to modern medicine, that's not the case. And it should be said that with everything happening in the country right now, pregnancy is never health neutral, ever. It is always an incredible risk that leaves lasting effects on a person's body. Also, I guess now is a good time to slip in the fact that 9 days from the day that I'm filming this on May 3rd, I'm actually having surgery to get my fallopian tubes yoinked out as a form of permanent birth control. I did not plan it this way, but it just happens to be the day after Mother's Day, so I'm going to be celebrating Mother's Day, and then the next day celebrating Never a Mother's Day with my mom because she's my ride. I really don't want my own children. I think I was put onto this earth to be the village, to be the cool aunt, the safe adult that is not your parents that you can confide in, and I want to be a part of my friends' children's lives. I just also want to go home at the end of the day and not have a child. So, but with the overturning of Roe v. Wade and the continued push to restrict access to women's health care, I just really feel like this is the best option for me. I am frustrated because this isn't necessarily something that I would be pursuing if that weren't the case. If all of the options for abortion and birth control were 100% without a doubt in my mind going to be available to me forever, then I wouldn't even be thinking about this because it's a whole ordeal. But that's not the case. And they're making birth control and abortion services more and more and more difficult to access. I'm like 99.8% sure that I never want a child of my own. However, if I ever were to change my mind, I still have all the other parts. IVF is still totally an option, but this really feels like the right choice for me to change pregnancy, like the concept of pregnancy, from a default maybe to a default no. I have to quite literally sign on the dotted line to opt into it. Like, it would be a whole thing to go out of my way to become pregnant, which I like that a lot better. I have also, sorry guys, I guess I'm just talking about pregnancy and how much it freaks me out right now. I have also been terrified of pregnancy since I was a child, and I thought as a kid a lot of that was like evangelical shame, virgin, purity culture. No, I think it's actually just pregnancy. I think it's, do you guys know anything about it? That shit's scary. Also, perhaps the best side effect ever, it almost eliminates your risk of ovarian cancer. Apparently, ovarian cancer often starts on the fallopian tubes and then it spreads, and by the time it spreads to your ovaries and you start actually getting symptoms, it's like too late. But if you don't have fallopian tubes, a lot of the time it'll just never start growing in the first place. So that's pretty neat. Anyways, with all of that out of the way, we're going to talk about Maude Ivory's ballad, which is Maude Clare by Christina Rossetti, published in 1859. In it, Maude Clare attends the wedding of Lord Thomas and Nell. Lord Thomas is her lover, who has chosen to marry another because she fits the ideal of who a man of his status is expected to marry within the judgmental and hierarchical society of the Victorian era. Out of church, she followed them, with a lofty step and mien. His bride was like a village maid, Maude Clare was like a queen. Lord Thomas doesn't seem particularly happy with his decision and prefers Maude Clare to his wife Nell in every way, but ultimately he still succumbs to the pressures of society instead of standing against them. My lord was pale with inward strife, and Nell was pale with pride. My lord gazed long on pale Maude Clare, or ever he kissed the bride. Hurt and angry, Maude Clare confronts the couple, but while she's bold and vulnerable with her feelings, Lord Thomas is kind of a coward and hides his own. Maude Clare is far from this ideal bride, both between her implied lack of virginity. Notice how that doesn't really ever seem to matter for the men, but her implied lack of virginity and her boldness in confronting them at all. Here's my half of the golden chain you wore about your neck. That day we waded ankle deep for lilies in the beck. Here's my half of the faded leaves we plucked from the budding bough. With feet amongst the lily leaves, the lilies are budding now. He strove to match her scorn with scorn. He faltered in his place. Lady, he said. Maude Clare, he said. Maude Clare, and hid his face. Get it together, buddy. Listen, you're just making yourself look like a fool. You're making yourself look like a fool, not only just in front of your ex-lover, but also your new wife. That's embarrassing. Now, Nell, the wife, does have an understanding of the situation. She's not like in the dark about what happened, but is ultimately content, or perhaps merely resigned to knowing that she is the second choice and has only won him because of their circumstances. Take my share of a fickle heart, mine a paltry love. Take it or leave it as you will, I wash my hands thereof. And what you leave, said Nell, I'll take, and what you spurn, I'll wear. For he's my lord, for better and worse, and I love him, Maude Clare. Yea, though you're taller by the head, more wise and much more fair, I'll love him till he loves me best of all, Maude Clare. So what can we glean from this story and apply to Maude Ivory's situation? As Lenore Dove puts it, her father has always been somewhat of a mystery. Her mother was not married to the father of her child, and he was not involved in Lenore Dove's life in any way. It's possible he never even knew that she was pregnant, or if he did, something was preventing him from being involved. Now, I know that it mentions in the book that, oh, you know, there's a rumor that one of the Chances is her father. I'm going to be honest, I don't think that's true. It doesn't really make sense with the ballad, because if anything, the Chances are just as much like, ooh, we shouldn't be associated with them as the Covey. And the story here is that pride and expectations of society is what's keeping them apart, not anything else. And again, the Chances feel, if anything, worse than... I think that passage more so was to imply the innate rebellious nature of Lenore Dove, which is how the Chance family is also held. They're rebels, and that's sort of the spirit that Lenore Dove has. I don't think it's meant to be taken in a literal sense. Although I guess you could, and everything I'm saying could be a piece of crack shit, because I'm speculating. I know that. If you think something else, let me know. But I think the most likely option here is that Lenore Dove's father was a peacekeeper, which, by the way, that type of relationship of peacekeepers getting district girls pregnant and then not having anything to do with them or the baby is explicitly talked about. And as it's explored a bit more in Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, peacekeeping is a 20-year commitment to the force with no room for any family or like leaving the squadron. So even if there was genuine love between them and they had wanted to be involved long term, Maude Ivory will never fit the societal expectation of an acceptable partner for anybody who wasn't born and raised in District 12. And then Ivory is a color representing innocence, beauty, and strength. But it's off-white. It's not quite pure enough. It's not quite perfection. It carries the stain of life. Think of all the white linens that are white, but they're like actually used and lived and worked in. Things like kitchen towels and handkerchiefs and linen work shirts. Most of them are going to be off-white, even when they're clean. And that's not a negative thing, it's just like how it goes. Maude Ivory, as pure of heart and voice and beauty as she is, can never truly be stripped of the context that she exists within. She's never going to be this snow white linen. It's going to be off-white, it's going to be ivory, but that's not to say that she doesn't hold her own value. Think of the value of ivory. Ivory in keyboards, primarily. There is an entire illegal poaching trade hustle thing for the exportation of ivory. But if that's not the framework that you're viewing things through, then it doesn't really matter, does it? So unfortunately, I will say Maude Ivory's ballad is the only one in this whole video that I could not find a recording of. There is not a traditional melody of any type associated with her ballad. It is a ballad, it's a poem that's a ballad, but it doesn't seem to be a ballad that's a song. So if anybody could point me in the direction of one, I'd be interested. Maybe this is your opportunity to take it into your own hands and create something. But yeah, she's the only one that's not going to be on the playlist, unfortunately. In a weird way, that kind of ties in with her character, doesn't it? Ooh, that's bad to say.
Will I see whom I adore? He replies, nevermore. Oh, Lenore, for you alone. Evermore will you be gone.
Which brings me to Lenore Dove. Once again, Suzanne, I would like to say thank you for the shout out, not only with my own name being Dove, but the fact that my best friend quite literally is named Lenora, with an A, not an E. Lenora. Oh, truly an incredible coincidence. That is a crazy coincidence, actually. So, as we know, Lenore Dove was named for the dead girl that the protagonist is grieving in The Raven by Edgar Allan Poe. But what I will say is that technically most of the ballads that Lenore Dove is associated with actually have more to do with Hamish and his perspective than they do with her. Now you might be saying, Multiple? Most? There is more than one? There's 5. We got a lot to get into. Lenore Dove's fate is, of course, pretty cut and dry. She dies. Hamish spends the rest of his life grieving her, and then the grief drives him to madness. I'm actually not going to go too in-depth with the Raven because, of course, the book already does that. However, I've learned that a bunch of you were skipping those parts, so we're going to talk about it a bit. Because as the poem progresses, Hamish's story mirrors that of the poem's protagonist. When the man in the poem hears knocking at his door, so does Hamish, as Burdock and Astrid fruitlessly try to help until he drives them away once and for all. Once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered, weak and weary, over many a quaint and curious volume of forgotten lore. While I nodded, nearly napping, suddenly there came a tapping, as of someone gently rapping at my chamber door. "'Tis some visitor," I muttered, tapping at my chamber door. Only this, and nothing more. Distinctly I remember, it was in the bleak December, and each separate dying ember wrought its ghost upon the floor. Eagerly I wished the morrow, vainly I had sought to borrow from my books her case of sorrow, sorrow for the lost Lenore, for the rare and radiant maiden, whom the angels named Lenore, nameless here forevermore. And as he falls into his alcoholism, he drowns in his nepenthe to dampen the pain of her memory. Then, methought, the air grew denser, perfumed from an unseen censer, swung by seraphim, whose footfalls tinkled on the tufted floor. "Wretch," I cried, "thy Goth hath lent thee, by these angels he hath sent thee, respite and nepenthe from thy memories of Lenore. Quaff, oh quaff, this kind nepenthe, and forget this lost Lenore." Quoth the Raven, "Nevermore." But there's no escape. She's a shadow who will cast down on his life forever. And the Raven, never flitting, still a sitting, on the pallid bust of Pallas just above my chamber door. And his eyes have all the seeming of a demon that is dreaming, and the lamplight over him streaming throws the shadow on the floor, and my soul from out that shadow lies floating on the floor, shall be lifted nevermore. I did end up finding a couple musical versions of The Raven, so I've included them on the playlist. But I promised you multiple ballads, so we got a lot to dig into. So first I need to tell you about Alan Lomax, another song catcher person. Alan Lomax was a collector of the actual music, and from 1937 to 1942 he was an assistant in charge of the archives of folk song for the Library of Congress, to which he and his father and numerous collaborators contributed more than 10,000 field recordings. And you can listen to the vast majority of these original recordings that were collected by Lomax himself on the website. I'll link it below. These are entirely unedited, uncut, and unaltered digitized versions of the original recordings. So I spent a whole day listening to many of them, far beyond the stuff I was looking for, because it was such a fascinating window into the past. And I will say that while researching this video, I genuinely got very emotional over the field of folk music preservation in and of itself. And I cried more than once listening to these recordings. It has nothing to do with the video, but I'm going to include a link below to one song called "I Hate the Capitalist System." And as she says at the end of the recording, the song was written and performed by Sarah Ogan, and every word of it is true. She tells the hardship and loss that her family has faced due to the system of greed that they and we live within. Incredibly relevant still.
I hate the company bosses. I'll tell you the reason why. They cause me so much suffering, and my dearest friends do die.
But another song that I came across was one called Lonesome Dove, not to be confused with the Western novel series from the 80s. Now this song is a perfect example of why the Roud Index is so helpful. It's classified as Roud number 422 and is a relatively uncommon variant of the song Fare Thee Well, My Own True Love. Also, my cat just took a shit and he has the zoomies, so I apologize if you can hear him running around, bouncing off the walls. And if you don't already know the song, might I suggest the surprisingly relevant movie Fly Away Home. It's one of my I loved this movie as a kid. It's about this girl who's being raised by a relative because her mom dies, and then she finds abandoned goose eggs and then raises geese. I know, it's pretty crazy, huh, bud?
Can I keep him?
Sure.
Hey guys, come on! Hey!
It's called imprinting. Amy was the first thing they saw when they were born.
But anyways, the song is prominently featured in that movie. The lyrics are once again mirroring Haymitch's own grief, but the connection is strengthened through her name and her color, Dove. Oh, don't you see that lonesome dove that flies from vine to vine? He's mourning for his own true love, as I shall mourn for mine. And I shall mourn for mine, my dear. Believe me when I say, you are the darling of my heart until my dying day. This is very distracting. Sorry.
Lit over my head a little turtle, for his lost mate began to coo, and it made me think of my lost mate too.
So, just like the geese, Haymitch had said they mated for life, just like the geese, the darling of his heart until his dying day. He literally used that phrasing. But that's not even the only supplemental bird song variant that I found in my studies, because another variation of a different common folk song, the cuckoo bird, also feels relevant. The cuckoo bird is practically like the opposite of Barbara Allen in the sense that it has about 1 million variations of lyrics and verses and general messaging. This is another English folk song that initially showed up about 800 years ago, so the variation is to be expected. But notably, among the American versions of this song, two things are almost always constant. The cuckoo bird brings a message or a reminder, and she brings it every year on the 4th of July. The American versions use the 4th of July as the date that the cuckoo bird brings the message. Many of them, not all of them. I really liked the version by Peter, Paul, and Mary. By the way, I'm a Peter, Paul, and Mary stan. That was in my I had a little CD Walkman when I was a small child. We're talking like 5 years old or so. And I had a little CD case with 8 slots that I took with me. And among those slots, the Lilo and Stitch soundtrack, obviously. The Spirit Stallion of the Cimarron soundtrack, obviously. Okay? The Oh Brother, Where Art Thou soundtrack, which explains why this was so exciting for me. And then also like a couple Peter, Paul, and Mary CDs. And the Beatles and the Beach Boys. But those aren't important right now. It's the Peter, Paul, and Mary and the Oh Brother, Where Art Thou. That's important. Anyways, I liked their version, but for some reason, they said the 1st of July. I'm like, oh, you're so close. So close. So on the playlist, I went with the version by Townes Van Zandt, which also, by the way, has a wicked fiddle solo.
Well, the cuckoo, she's a pretty bird, and she warbles and she flies. Well, she brings glad tidings, and she tells no lie.
And here's the thing. 3 songs for Lenore Dove is more than enough, all right? Any more would be excessive. Except that literally as I was almost done writing the script, like this was maybe the last 1,000, 2,000 words or so, like I was so close to being done, I happened upon not 1, but 2 more ballads that I quite literally could not leave out of this video because they are too important. They like made everything fit into place perfectly. They are both called Lenore, and one was written by the German author Gottfried August Brugger, in 1773, and the other one was written in 1843 by a guy that you probably already know. In fact, I know you know because we just talked about him. It's another poem by Edgar Allan Poe called Lenore. Oh, you thought this was a rabbit? You thought it was a rabbit?
Oh, you thought this was a rabbit? They thought this was a rabbit.
Aw, that's funny.
That's fucking funny, bitch. It's fucking Winnie the fucking Pooh. Yeah. Fuck 4th of July.
So like The Raven, Lenore by Edgar Allan Poe is primarily about grief and lost love. Except, unlike The Raven, it focuses not on the personal, internal experience of grief, but rather the societal expectations around the proper expression of grief. The 4 stanzas show a conversation between an insincere mourner and Lenore's fiancé. In the first stanza, the mourner praises her as saintly and reproaches her fiancé for not crying at her funeral. In my own interpretation, it's because he's still in shock. Her death is too recent and unexpected, similar to how Hamish didn't actually cry when he was at the funeral with everybody else. He was in shock from everything he had just witnessed and what was happening. In the second stanza, Lenore's fiancé calls the mourner a hypocrite, saying that they slandered her while she was still alive. And the mourner admits to his faults, but calls out the fiancé for an improper outburst at such a solemn event, until the fiancé truly has had it. And in the final stanza, he declares his anger at the future that was taken from him and his fiancé, declaring that he will not mourn her, but rejoice that her soul rose to the highest ranks among heaven, where she belonged. In other words, like, this world was too bad for her. She deserved better. At least she's somewhere that she deserves to be now. Brugger's Lenore, on the other hand, was written as the answer to a plea for preservation of German folk music, similar to the work of Child and Lomax and the other song catchers that I've mentioned. This ballad was based on the partially remembered lyrics that were heard sung in a street by a peasant girl. Literally, this guy was like on his way somewhere, he heard this, and then somebody wrote an entire ballad based off of what was overheard. The resulting work was an immediate success in Germany and quickly spread, being widely translated into different languages, some of which would eventually inform and inspire other famous works. You know, like Dickens' A Christmas Carol, or perhaps Stoker's Dracula, if you've ever heard of those. And one of the most popular translations was by Dante Gabriel Rossetti, the brother of Christina Rossetti, who is the author of Maude Claire and the husband of Elizabeth Siddal. Siddal. What do you guys think? Anyways, she's gonna come up later in this video, so there's like this weird little connection. The ballad was also adapted into symphonic music as well as a arrangement that has spoken word and piano, but it's in German, so I couldn't find an English version, unfortunately. Nothing against listening to the German version, I just couldn't, like, say it for you. But I like that it was adapted specifically into a piano piece because Lenore Dove, she loves to play the mayor's piano, and her piano squeeze box, which is of course Billy Taupe's accordion. I'm gonna have to make a different video covering some of our favorite like narrative foil pairs. Again, different day. But unlike all of the other songs in this section, Brugger's Lenore is not from the perspective of people who are grieving her, but from the perspective of Lenore herself and the events leading to her death. Do you want to take a guess as to what happens? Lenore's love, William. They really liked William. I swear they had like 7 names. Before 1900, they had 7 names. That was it. So Lenore's love, William, has been off at war. Though the war has now ended, he has yet to return. She's been waiting and waiting, and he's still not home yet. She begins to quarrel with God, speaking words that are considered blasphemous, despite interference from her mother, who begs forgiveness on her behalf in an attempt to keep her out of trouble. But still, she argues on. One evening, a knight who appears to be William comes knocking, nice, searching for Lenore and asking her to accompany him on horseback to their marriage bed. She joins him and they ride along into the night. Finally, as the sun begins to rise, they reach their destination, which turns out to be a cemetery. When dawn breaks, the knight loses its human appearance, and she realizes it's not her long-lost love, William, but death itself. His sword is not a sword, but a scythe, and his shield is not a shield, but an hourglass. The marriage bed that she's brought to is a grave, where William's skeleton waits for her, and where she then joins him. So, yeah. And then, of course, we have her color, the name that we share, Dove. Doves are so frequently associated with peace and, like, pacifism. Well, I think that's, like, it fits me fine, I guess. Lenore Dove doesn't exactly give off this, like, pacifism type of vibe. And, in fact, is quite literally, like, a known agitator who likes to stir the pot. So, as I was looking deeper into the traditions around doves as symbols beyond what I already had in my head from my own experiences, I found this really interesting note from Wiki about their symbolism in Judaism. Quote, in post-biblical Judaism, souls are envisioned as bird-like, a concept that may be derived from the biblical notion that dead spirits chirp. The treasury of souls is sometimes described as a columbarium or a dovecote. So apparently columba is the like root of the word dove, which I didn't know about, and it's very interesting because I think about all of the columb like that kind of root word and all of the places that you can find it. And of course a dovecote is where they would keep flocks of birds, normally pigeons or doves, and of course we have Clemencia dovecote, but that's a whole other thing. But in this instance it's a molosseum. Yeah, that's how you say that. A dovecote in this case is actually referring to a mausoleum, so like a place where you keep bodies. This connects it to a related legend, the Palace of the Bird's Nest, or the dwelling place of the Messiah's soul until his advent. The Vilna Gaon, I apologize if I'm saying that wrong, explicitly declares that a dove is a symbol of the human soul. I thought this connection was just really interesting given the association of like non-living states of being and Lenore Dove's general macabre symbolism within her name and literally all of the ballads that I could find that fit in well with her. And then of course in North America, when we think of doves, we're normally thinking about mourning doves. And even that nomenclature, though the birds themselves are typically associated with like new beginnings and hope, or maybe it's even like happy nostalgia when you wake up early enough that you can like hear them in the morning and it makes us feel like, oh, we're a kid again. Even though that's like what they symbolize, they still carry that sadness in their name, just like Hamish will carry that sadness his whole life. Okay, so that completes all of the Baird cousins and their offspring. So we have our next little set, the Clade brothers, or rather the Clerk's trois sons. Billy, Taupe, and Clerk Carmine are our token sibling set in the Covey. Now I'm going to be upfront and say that until I was literally working on this video, I always forgot that these two even had a last name. Let alone that their last name is Clade. This is like the fourth time that I've talked about it. I think it's like already the third time that I've talked about it just in this video, but clade means family. When you're talking about like any type of taxonomic classification, a clade is a family. So the fact that Suzanne really beat that one into the ground. So before we jump into either of them individually, I did come across a ballad in my research, specifically while I was looking into Clerk Carmine, and it serves as a good bridge between the two of them. So we're going to talk about child ballad number 72, which is called The Clerk's Trois Sons of Ozenford. The Clerk's Trois Sons, you see how I found it. It was, I was like, okay, there are three that use the name Clerk. Let's look at them. And this one was the third one. So in this ballad, the Clerk's two sons, the younger one named Andrew and the older one named William. Again, 7 names. But William, that's... yeah, okay, Billy, William, okay. In it, they seduce the 2 daughters of the mayor. And when the mayor finds out about this, Andrew and William are sentenced to hang. The clerk and his wife try to bribe the mayor to save their sons' lives, but they're unsuccessful and both of them hang. In some versions, the mayor's daughters also try to stop this, but they are not successful. So with that, we're going to move into Billy Taupe. I'm going to be so honest with you guys. I really struggled with doing Billy Taupe's. In fact, I literally finished his section this morning because I was like, I have to record this today. I was supposed to record it yesterday. I couldn't finish this damn section because I was avoiding it. I really struggled with the research on this name. That's partially why I was so inclined to include the bit about the clerk's trois sons, because frankly, in some ways, it fit better than anything else that I could find among other ballads that included any variation of the name Billy, Willie, William, Bill. I was searching for them all. If you look on the Hunger Games wiki, which, by the way, very helpful just to like check something really quick, not necessarily a textually reliable source all the time. So don't just blindly trust anything you read on there. But that, as well as basically every single Reddit thread that I could find on the topic, everybody thinks that Billy Taupe's ballad is he's probably just named after the American folk song Billy Boy. I think that's a load of horse shit. 2 reasons. Actually, they're both kind of the same reason. Number 1, Billy Boy is not a ballad. It is not a ballad. It doesn't tell a story. It honestly doesn't say anything at all. It's a silly little song about some girl that Billy is into, and we, the person singing, are asking Billy about all the things she can do. Can she bake a cherry pie? Billy Boy, Billy Boy. Can she bake a cherry pie? Charming Billy. Can she make a feather bed? Billy Boy, Billy Boy. Can she make a feather bed? Charming Billy. That's all the song is.
Did she sit for you a chair, Billy Boy, Billy Boy? Did she sit for you a chair, charming Billy? Yes, she set for me a chair, and she's got ringlets in her hair, but she's a young thing and cannot leave her mother.
It has no story to it. He was not named after frickin' Billy Boy, okay? Number 2, that's also the same thing, is that when every single other Covey member's name ballad clearly foreshadows their story, why would his break that convention? It wouldn't. He's not named after Billy Boy. I'm sorry, guys. But the problem then arises because, no, really, what the hell was he named after then? I have one primary guess, but I have a lot of kind of sort of maybes. So I'm not going to dig into the kind of sort of maybes, but I am just going to throw them at you if you're curious. Billy the Kid by Woody Guthrie, kind of sort of maybe. He was shot down by a guy who was once his friend. Billy Barlow, but specifically the version from the Smithsonian Songs of the Civil War collection, sung by Jerry Silverman, because there's another folk song that's commonly called Billy Bardo that's actually a completely different song that's based off of the English folk ballad The Cuddy Wren, which is a whole other thing. And then there's Billy and the Darbies, which is a ballad that's included in the final chapter of Herman Melville's final novella, Billy Budd. And Herman Melville, of course, wrote Moby Dick. Kind of, sort of, maybe. I don't know. They have some similarities, but they don't have enough. They don't have enough compared to the other one I'm going to tell you. But frankly, none of them fit perfectly. None of them, which is frustrating to me because all the others fit perfectly. So the one that makes the most sense is actually the Bold William Taylor, or also called Willie Taylor, or also called Billy Taylor. By this point, you guys understand how folk songs work. There's a million of them. They're all a little different. They mix them up a little bit. Oh, hello. Are you joining me? Are you gonna snuggie? Lost your balance a little bit. You're so into that pet that whoops. Anyways, so in this ballad, William Taylor is going to be soon married to his love, who, by the way, in many versions, is named Sarah Gray. Okay, moving on. Before the two are married, William becomes a sailor. In some versions, he is drafted. In other versions, he just, decides to go. So his lover mourns for him, but then eventually decides that she's going to go get him, okay? She disguises herself as a man to become a sailor, and then go find him so she can be with him.
I'll sing you a song about two lovers, all from Richfield town they came. The young man's name was William Taylor, Sally Gray was the lady's name.
So at some point, she is discovered to be a woman by the captain, who then demands that she explain herself, which she does, and then he actually tries to help her find him. Well now, says the captain, my dear lady, what misfortune brought you here? I am in search of my true lover, whom you have pressed the other year. Well, says the captain, my dear lady, tell me the young man's name. Some folks call him Billy Taylor. William Taylor is his name. If Billy Taylor's your dear lover, then he has proved himself untrue. He's got married to another, and left you alone to rue. And then the captain tells her where and when she can find him. And the wording choice in this particular stanza, or rather the version of the song in the stanza that I chose from the many versions, if you rise early in the morning, just before the break of day, there you'll find bold William Taylor a-walkin' with his lady fair. His lady fair? I know, listen, May, fair, I didn't even mean to say her name in that way. I literally mean that, like, you will find the ways that they describe women in the many folk songs. It's often like fair lady, or like May as a title. Like May Margaret is a title, technically not a name. Her name is Margaret, but she's May Margaret. So walking his lady fair, May fair. Okay. Anyways, so this is the part where like things start to veer off course a little bit and the details get murky, because it's like same outcome. It's different though. Sarah Gray asks the captain for a pistol, which he ends up giving to her, and then she shoots Billy Taylor as he's walking with his bride. So like, I don't know guys, close enough? Closer than the other ones. Still not quite right though, and it's really bothering me. If there is somebody out there who knows, and it's none of the songs that I've listed, it's something else and something else fits, please tell me, because I can't find it. I spent days wasting my time on Billy specifically. Days. I've read so many freaking... It's okay.
Oh, is this you, young William Taylor? And by your side, is this your wife? One that's caught you, never shall enjoy you, for this wicked crime will end your life. She called for a sword and a brace of pistols. They were brought at her command, and there she shot young William Taylor as he held his new bride by the hand.
Maybe Suzanne just went rogue. It's just, I don't know, everything else is so on the nose. And this is also kind of on the nose, except when it isn't. So I don't know. Maybe I'm too in my head about it. Guys, I've been working on this like nonstop for days. Actually for weeks at this point. This was a very intense video. So then as for Billy Taupe's color, taupe quite literally means mole in French. Colloquially, it refers to like a pretty wide range of neutral, grayish, brownish, tannish colors, but it's most commonly connected with the darker color of the animal. Whether or not he ever means to be, Billy Taupe is a mole in like every sense. I mean, he quite literally tells them that Mayfair is, quote, all talk, no action. As if Lucy Gray wasn't just sent to the Hunger Games because his little girlfriend got jealous.
Quiet down, Mayfair. I'll explain later.
I think I'm done listening to your explanations. She's not going anywhere, and neither are you. My pa's gonna string y'all up.
She'll tell everyone, you idiot. She'll get us all hung.
He's right.
No, she won't, Spruce. She's all talk, no action.
What do you think, Lucy Gray? Mild talk, no action. Hey, how'd you enjoy the Capitol, by the way? See y'all at the hanging tree.
Read the room, Billy Taupe. Get serious. Oh my god. Him not being more judicious with who he allows access to information regarding any type of underground rebel dealings is literally why the informants of the book get their info. Because why is Billy Taupe just like casually telling Sejanus, who, yes, is on Billy Taupe's side, but is still quite literally a peacekeeper, anything about their plans? Why is he just out in the yard, drawing a map? Dumb. You're being dumb. Again, Sejanus, yes, in theory. Oh, perfectly fine person to tell because he's on your side. Sejanus also doesn't have a filter. And he's a peacekeeper. And his buddy that's inside, Courtney's girlfriend, is a little pissant who's gonna go tattle on everybody. Why would he let Mayfair know what's going on when her daddy is the fucking mayor? So yeah, like a little mole, there he is in the dirt digging his own grave. I'm sorry, Billy Taupe. Listen, you were a victim to circumstance for sure. Things are tough. You gotta do what you gotta do. I know that's why you started giving her lessons at the first piano lessons. That's how you got involved. And admittedly, honestly, by the time Lucy Gray comes back, I will say that there's... Billy Taupe probably doesn't necessarily... I don't think he can break it off with Mayfair, really, because she holds so much power over all of them. So I do think it's a nuanced issue. But also, your choices affect other people, dude. You gotta... Your choices affect other people. It's not all about you.
Clark Saunders and May Margaret were walking on the garden green, and sad and heavy was the love that fell these 12 others between.
Alright, we're getting down to our last two. And I need you guys to know that from here out, I genuinely did shed many tears. I did! While I was researching, while I was reading, while I was listening to an instrumental fiddle tune. It's a whole thing. We'll get to it. So Clerk Carmine is the younger of the two brothers, and I'm gonna mostly be calling him Cece through this section because I have a hard time pronouncing his name, and I don't want to have to do a million takes because I keep tripping over it. Plus, that is what Lucy Gray called him most of the time, so I don't feel too bad. Like, that is legitimately a nickname that he has. Cece is the only character in the entire series that was born before the Hunger Games began and lived to see them end. And we know this because he is directly referenced in Mockingjay as the lone fiddler who plays for Finnick in Annie's Wedding, and Suzanne Collins has directly confirmed that that is Clerk Carmine. So Cece gets his name from the child ballad number 69, Clerk Saunders. And in this ballad, May Margaret, see, title, not a name, May Margaret and Clerk Saunders are young and in love, and they want to lie with each other. But doing so would be dangerous to May Margaret's reputation and dangerous to Clerk Saunders' safety. May Margaret explains that she has 7 brothers, and should they catch them, they would not hesitate to hurt him. But the pair can't resist, and instead they come up with this kind of like poop hole loophole situation. So they don't technically have to lie to anybody. So he's taken the sword from out his scabbard and slowly lifted the pin, that she might swear and save her oath that she never let Clerk Sandy in. Then she's taken him up in her 2 arms and carried him unto her bed, that she might swear and save her oath Clerk Sandy never in my bower did tread. It's like, I technically didn't let him. He threatened me. He never walked in my room. I just carried him. I'm sorry, this isn't funny, but I'm getting to the point in recording videos where I'm like, all right, it's been a while. If you ever notice, I do get a little bit more giggly as the videos go on. So late into the night, they have fallen asleep in each other's arms, and the brothers do end up finding them. The 7 brothers discuss what should be done. So the first says that he knows they've been dear lovers and he'll let them be. And the second brother agrees, saying that they've had feelings for each other for years. The third pipes up that it'd be such a shame if they were to split. So the fourth brother sort of changes the direction here from like, are they a good couple, to is this morally okay? And he points out that it's a sin to kill a sleeping man. So the 5th brother agrees and says, well, I won't harm them ever. And then the 6th brother says that they will then leave and go on their way. Unfortunately, 7th brother, no qualms about how good a match they may be, or any concern about whether killing a sleeping man is a sin.
He's talking it, a bright long brand. He striked it 3 times through the straw, and through Clark Saunders' body he's got the rusty rapier go.
And then from there they just leave him. You know, May Margaret sleeps the rest of the night next to her slaughtered lover. And when she wakes in the morning, she doesn't realize at first, and she tries to wake him gently from his sleep so that he can sneak out. Except she can't, and she draws back the sheets and sees that he has been slain. She begins to scream and curse her brothers, vowing that she will never marry, and therefore she is cementing the shame that her brother was trying to save the family of. And then it's in and came her father dear, said, "Daughter, let your mourning be. We'll take Clerk Saunders to his grave, then come back and comfort thee. O comfort well your 7 sons, or no man shall ever comfort me. For since you've slain my own true love, a wedded I shall never be." So we really don't know all that much about Clerk Carmine initially from the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. He's young. We know that he's young. He's somewhere between 12 and maybe 14, and he's sad over his brother Billy Taupe being excommunicated from the Covey. But that's really all that we know about him. Also, he is mad at Billy Taupe. It's not like he doesn't agree, but it's, that's his brother. He loves him. It's a hard situation to be in because he also loves Lucy Gray as a sister. So when brother betrays sister, it's a lot to feel. But then his character is expanded upon in Sunrise on the Reaping, where we learn that he and Tam Amber raised Lenore Dove together, essentially acting as her fathers after Maude Ivory died, giving birth to her. We also learn that in comparison to Tam Amber, he's the hard-ass parent who is overly protective and outspoken and ready to get in and fight for her. Not that Tam Amber wouldn't fight for her, but you have a hard parent and a soft parent. That's a common dynamic. He is overly protective of Lenore Dove and cautiously wary of Haymitch's influence. Although, of course, Cece knows that Lenore Dove is a danger enough to herself, so I believe that the wariness of Haymitch is more around the possibility of him inadvertently encouraging her than it is around him, influencing her. I think she's the influence. So this is from page 362 in Sunrise on the Reaping. "I just want 5 minutes to myself. Is that possible around here, or am I still in prison? Fine. 5 minutes. Then I want you back in the house for breakfast. You hear me?" says Clerk Carmine. She gives him a peacekeeper salute. "Yes, sir. Understood, sir. You can count on me, sir." Clerk Carmine takes a step forward, but Tam Amber lays a hand on his arm, and he just resigns himself to a parting shot. "Don't make us come down to fetch you, young lady." The uncles head back to the house. And suddenly I feel a burst of affection for Clerk Carmine. We both really want the same thing, for Lenore Dove to be safe and happy. And he was right about his concerns over me. I mean, a boy from a rebel family who brews white liquor and disappears for hours with his niece in the woods does not spell security. Plus, I'm not even musical. I think I would have won him over eventually if I had had the chance, but now it consoles me that when I run away, he will be here guarding her. I guess I'll never have the chance to tell him so, but it's true. But then when it actually comes to the connection that Cece has to his ballad, the answer is given to us in the beginning of the book. Lenore Dove? Clerk Carmine doesn't holler, but he has one of those voices that carries without needing to. He stands at the edge of the meadow, fist shoved in his patched overalls. He's a fiddler and protective of his hands. "Better be getting ready." "I'm coming," she says, wiping her eyes. Clerk Carmine doesn't comment on our state, just shoots me a look that says he holds me responsible, and then turns on his heel. He's never paid me much mind until Lenore Dove and I got serious. Since then, nothing I do seems right. I once told Lenore Dove I thought he just hated love, and that's when she revealed he'd been together some 30 years with a fellow in town who replaces busted windows. They have to keep it quiet, because loving differently can get you harassed by the peacekeepers, fired from jobs, arrested even. Given his own challenges, you'd think Clerk Carmine would be a champion of our love. I'm certainly supportive of his, but I guess he thinks Lenore Dove can do better. Ally. Valentina, she's an ally! Ally! Oh my god, I have to put a video here of the... Oh my god, I just saw a TikTok the other day that was of a fucking pigeon picking up a trans flag from a river, and it has the Valentina ally. I'm gonna put that here so you guys don't think I'm crazy trying to describe it to you, but it's so fitting.
Valentina, say ally.
having that context, it so easily connects the two narratives, because Clerk Carmine, like Clerk Saunders, has to be cautious about hiding his love to shield himself and his lover from societal repercussions. And given the violence that we're accustomed to seeing in the Hunger Games universe, we can be pretty confident knowing that it's likely to not just stop there, and in fact could more closely resemble the actual ballad. Depending on who were to discover them, should they ever get found out, I'm sure there are far worse things to experience than getting let go from a job. And then I couldn't stop thinking about the detail that's given about Cece's partner's profession. Like, it's such a specific thing, number one, to specialize in as a job, but number two, as like a thing to just include in the narrative. And especially given the context of this prejudice towards queer people in Pan Am, I couldn't help but think of two things. Number one, how a brick through a window has become like the de facto media trope for showing a hate crime. The fact that he fixes windows. And then number two, like going from that association with the conversation around like who threw the first brick at Stonewall. Like, brick through a window, or brick being thrown, often through window, has such a like cultural tie to queerness, frankly, and the ways that people are accepting or unaccepting of queerness. So I will say something I loved about this video in comparison to other videos that I've done. You guys know my heart is in geography. Okay, it is, but also I haven't gotten to do like literature reviews in a long time, and this, I was like I'm like reading original 17th century manuscripts. Like, I'm like in it, right? But for this one, this one was 19th century. I found an entire second half of the ballad that is included in the book The Minstrelsy of the Scottish Border, which was published by Walter Scott in 1812. So in the second half of the ballad, which is omitted from any of the oral recorded performances that I could find, so like they don't typically sing this half, Clerk Saunders' revenant comes to visit May Margaret before dawn, the day after he's been buried. So a revenant is like if a ghost were also a zombie, but not a zombie. What I mean by that is he's like a ghost with a physical presence. He's not like, oh, an apparition. He's like basically a person. His existence is limited by the daytime, so he only exists at night. But so he's like a ghost, but like if you could touch a ghost. I haven't seen Casper the Friendly Ghost in a while. I'm pretty sure those are Casper the Ghost rules. Correct me if I'm wrong. You can... Everybody had a crush on him. You could touch him, right? I might take this part out. So anyway, Clerk Saunders' ghost that's not a ghost calls out to May Margaret through her open window, asking if she's awake and if she will pledge her loyalty to him once more, basically so he can like rest in peace. She asks if he may kiss her first, which he refuses, explaining that if he does, she too will die. It's dangerous for him to show his affection to her in that way. She does eventually pledge her loyalty to him, but not before. She demands an answer to an incredibly interesting and surprisingly relevant question. What happens to women when they die in childbirth? And to be clear, the version that I was reading is written in like a Scots, it's not like quite English, it's not fully Scots either. And in the footnotes, they literally clarify the phrase to be like, she is asking if what happens to women who die in childbirth. Like 100% that's what she's saying. My mouth, it is full cold, Margaret. It has the smell now of the ground. And if I kiss thy comely mouth, thy days of life will not be long. Oh, cocks are crowing a merry midnight. I wot the wild fowls are boding day. Give me my faith and troth again, and let me fare me on my way. Thy faith and troth thou sall na get, and our true love sall never twin, until ye tell what comes of women, I wot, who die in strong travellin'. So this question is not tied to any other details included in the ballad, at least not explicitly. It really comes out of nowhere. There are two options for what's going on here. Has May Margaret, does she think she might be pregnant? Is she herself concerned about her own safety? she's scared of the possibility that she could die? Or has May Margaret lost somebody to childbirth? I mean, throughout the ballad, her father and brothers are referenced multiple times, and her mother not even once. Perhaps she's asking the fate of her own mother, who died in childbirth, and she's a product of that. And I think that is actually more likely. It's really interesting that this is the question that's asked, though, because both Clerk Carmine and Clerk Saunders have their own versions of an answer. As in, Clerk Saunders is dead, so he knows the answer. Like, he has this knowledge because he has access to what it is like in any type of afterlife, okay? Clerk Carmine, on the other hand, can only wonder, but the wondering is personal to him because he has lost somebody in that situation. He lost Maude Ivory, and he gained a child from it. That became, because of that loss, he has this life and this love of a daughter, really, with Tam Amber. He has a family unit that he perhaps never imagined for himself. I mean, at the end of the day, his romantic partner is in the town and he fixes windows, but Tam Amber, in a lot of ways, is his life partner as well. I mean, Clerk Carmine, I think Clerk Carmine got the widest breadth of experience of any people in the Covey. Like, he just had more opportunities. Unfortunately, those opportunities most of the time led to tragedy, but the fact that he survived them and continued to come upon them over and over again, I don't know, it's very tragic. Anyway, this is the answer that Clerk Saunders gives. Their beds are made in heavens high, down at the foot of our good Lord's knee. We'll sit about with gilly flowers, I wot sweet company for to see. O cocks are crowing a merry midnight, I wot the wild fowl are boding day. The psalms of heaven will soon be sung, and I, ere now, will be missed away. So, knowing that she can't touch him, but to still show her affection and say goodbye, she touches him with a wooden wand that she herself has kissed, and then she presses it to his lips through the window. This can be seen in most of the paintings that depict this particular ballad, such as the one by Siddal. Remember how I said earlier, I was like, his wife, we're going to talk about her in the future. Yeah, she did this beautiful painting of Clerk Saunders. And I just think it's so interesting that the people involved with the creation of these ballads that will become these characters' names, like, literally know each other. So in the poem, sometimes it's called crystal. Again, in all of the depictions, it's shown as wood. Take it or leave it. Interpret it how you will. It's all loosey-goosey. That wasn't meant to be a goose pun. Then she's taken a crystal wand, and she has stroken her troth thereon. She has given it to him, out the shot window, with a money sad sigh and a heavy groan. I thank you, Margaret. I thank you, Margaret. And I thank you heartily. Gin ever the dead come back for thee quick, be sure, Margaret, I'll come for thee. And then he begins on his way, but May Margaret climbs through the window to follow her love to the edge of the forest, as in where the Covey live, which he walks into and disappears forever. She calls after him, asking one last time if she may lie with him again, but he tells her that there's no room, and his bed is now a grave, and he sleeps among the worms, and she shouldn't follow. It's hosen and shoon and grown alone. She climbed the wall and followed him, until she came to the green forest, and there she lost the sight of him. Is there any room at your head, Saunders? Is there any room at your feet? Or any room at your side, Saunders, where fain I would sleep? There's no room at my head, Margaret. There's no room at my feet. My bed is full and lowly now, among the hungry worms I sleep. Cold mold is my covering now, but and my winding sheet. The dew it falls no sooner down than my resting place is wet. But we're going to go back to the wand for a moment, this wooden wand. The intimacy of touching it from her lips to his, combined with the style of the painting of the ballad that I showed you earlier, for me, evoked the imagery of like the tarot suit of wands. I dabble in tarot a little tiny bit. I'm a novice at best, so I consulted the Holy Oracle to give me the information. In other words, I googled wands tarot suit meaning Reddit. You know, that's consulting the oracle, I think. Thank you to Reddit user HabitAdept8688, who certainly did not disappoint. This is what they have to say about the suit of wands. While it's not strictly accurate to say that wands solely symbolize passion, it certainly is one of the vibrant threads woven into the rich tapestry of wands symbolism. The suit of wands in the tarot holds hands with the elements of fire, not just randomly, but hinged upon the time-honored traditions of magic, where the primeval forces of fire are believed to reside within the wood. Imagine a seed deep within the heart of a tree, carrying the potential for a grand blazing inferno within its unassuming shell. Such is the energy of the suit of wands, a potent energy contained, waiting for a spark to set it free, transform it into something more. It can be the roiling passion that fills your veins, the raw strength that holds you steadfast in the storm, the burning desire that keeps you awake at night, or even the joy that makes your heart sing. Picture a forest, tranquil and serene, nestled in the curve of a tranquil mountain range. Suddenly, a bolt of lightning is sent by the tempestuous sky, strikes a tree. In an instant, the peaceful forest is transformed into a crackling inferno. This could be seen as a harsh, violent event, a stressful, challenging time. But think further, past the initial chaos. From the ashes of the old, new life sprouts, regrowth begins, and the cycle of life continues. That is the suit of wands. Fire, in its purest form, is a force of both creation and destruction. It warms our homes, cooks our foods, and lights our way in the dark. Yet, when unleashed, it can raze cities to the ground. This duality is also reflected in the wands, and it also relates to its divine and spiritual sense, since fire is immaterial, and it can help sustain a paradise or unleash hell. They can signify the birth of an idea, the start of a journey, or the ignition of a romantic relationship. On the flip side, they could suggest conflicts, arguments, and struggles. Thus, when you draw a wand card, picture that latent fire, its potential for both comfort and chaos. Think about the source of the fire, the strike of the match, the spark of friction, the bolt from the storm, and what it may symbolize in your current situation or question. Whether it's the spark of inspiration or the flame of discord, wands urge us to embrace the transformative power of fire and use it to fuel our journey forward. Oh, they're a writer. oh, they're a writer. Yeah, a storyteller. They're painting a picture for us. I mean, that was honestly, genuinely, just a great piece of writing. And then, of course, we have Carmine. Deep red crimson, the color of spilled blood, the color of love, of passion, of anger, of vengeance, and fury. Clerk Carmine, unlike the poor Clerk Saunders, was not killed for his forbidden love, though I imagine at some point he might have wished it had. This poor man has been through so much, seen so much, lost so much. Instead, Cece's life, like his name, is stained in the blood of those around him, all those he lost, while year after year he keeps on living. He loses his parents as a young child when they're killed after the war. He loses both Lucy Gray and his brother Billy Taupe twice. First, when Billy Taupe's actions send Lucy Gray into the games, and it gets Billy Taupe expelled from the Covey. And then again, when Billy Taupe is actually shot, and Lucy Gray disappears. He loses them both twice. He loses Maude Ivory when she dies giving birth, and he raises her daughter as his own until he loses her too. And it feels worth mentioning that Haymitch does also wait by Lenore Dove's window in the end as well, fruitlessly hoping that she will visit him and that he can join her in her grave. The Covey's crooked house stands dark and silent in the moonlight. I roam around the yard like a stray dog, curled up under her window, yearning for her ghost to find me. It must be 3 a.m. when the fiddle begins, soft and low, playing her song. Guys, freaking Clerk Carmine, I love him so much. I really do. When District 12 is bombed, most of the survivors are residents of the scene, and few, if any, make it out of the town, making it unlikely that Clerk Carmine's partner would have survived. We don't know for sure the fate of Tam Amber, but when Clerk Carmine plays the music for Annie and Finnick's wedding, he isn't accompanied by a mandolin. It's possible that Tam Amber's instrument was destroyed, or that his hands are too stiff because he's too old after a lifetime of working with them, forging things. But there's an equally good and perhaps better chance that he's gone too, and that Cece is the only remaining member of the Covey and the last one to carry their memory in its entirety. If anyone really wants to make me cry, feel free to write a one-shot of Clerk Carmine and Hamish having a conversation, like either in District 13 right before the end of the war or like afterwards. I just want to hear them talk, and I want to have them take a breath together, and I want them to like remember together and find comfort and community from that, because they've both been through so much. If I think about it too hard, I literally am going to start crying again. And I haven't even told you the part that I really started crying over yet. Oh my god. Anyway, if any of you guys write that, send me the link. Send me the link. I'm ready, I'm waiting, I'm willing. Send me the link. So everything up to this point has been leading up to the final member of the Covey, the unexpected star of my show, love of my heart, the once lost soul, now found, the gentle and the wise Tam Amber. Up until the release of Sunrise on the Reaping, Tam Amber was probably the Covey member we knew the least about, even less than Barb Azure, which is saying quite a bit. He speaks a total of 2 lines. 2 lines in the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, and he only adds 1 more in Sunrise on the Reaping, despite playing a much larger role in the story comparatively. But when we got our formal on-stage introduction to the Covey by Maude Ivory, he is the first instrumentalist that was brought out. The crowd applauded, and Maude Ivory bobbed curtsies until they quieted enough for her to start the introductions. On mandolin, Tam Amber. A tall, raw-boned young man in a feathered hat came from behind the curtain, strumming an instrument similar to a guitar, but with a body more like a teardrop. He walked straight to Maude Ivory's side, not acknowledging the audience in any way, his fingers moving easily over the strings. Before Sunrise on the Reaping came out, honestly, I used to mix up Tam Amber and Clerk Carmine all the time. I totally forgot which was which was the brother, which was the not brother, which was fiddler and mandolin. They were like kind of the same in my head, even though they were different. And specifically, I got their instruments mixed up. I kept thinking that Tam Amber was the fiddler, not Clerk Carmine. And the reason that I kept getting it mixed up is because I was obsessed with this specific YouTube video when I was in middle school, and I'm actually going to play a piece of it for you. This video is now 16 years old, which is pretty crazy, especially considering it's already been like 13, 14 years since I was in middle school. Jesus Christ. That's fucked up. I'll have to think about that on a different day. Anyways, I was obsessed with this. It's a piece of Irish traditional music called Tamlin, or also known as the Glasgow Reel, which I know is Scottish, okay? But I'm not getting the two mixed up. That's just what it's called. Anyways, yeah, I did have this video YouTube to MP3'd and on my phone. So because of that, I kept thinking of Tam Amber as the fiddler, not Clerk Carmine. So back to Tam Amber's backstory, we do get a little bit of it in Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. Tam Amber is a lost soul, said Maude Ivory matter-of-factly. So Lucy Gray didn't have a monopoly on the strange manner of talking. It must be a Covey thing. Rude. A lost soul? asked Coriolanus. Sure. The Covey found Tam Amber when he was just a baby. Somebody left him in a cardboard box on the side of the road, so he's ours. Joke's on them, too, because he's the finest picker alive, Maude Ivory declared. Not much of a talker, though. Not much of a talker, indeed. But incredibly talented at mandolin. Another part in the book. As Coriolanus knew from helping Lucy Gray rehearse in the Capitol, the Covey had a wide and varied repertoire, and played straight instrumental numbers as well. At times, some of the members would exit, disappearing behind the blanket, to leave the stage to a pair or a solo performer. Tam Amber proved something of a standout on his mandolin, riveting the crowd with his lightning-fast fingering, while his face remained emotionless and distant. Autistic king, that's what it's giving. We know his backstory, but in Sunrise on the Reaping we get more lore and a better understanding of who he is as a man. As a fellow father figure to Lenore Dove alongside Clerk Carmine, Haymitch declares him to be the gentle parent, the softy who can be swayed by her will. For the war, he was actually a talented wayfinder, and knew how to navigate the Covey using the stars, a skill that he then passed on to Lenore Dove, and Lenore Dove passed on to Haymitch's little brother Sid, who I can't talk about Sid in this. Don't get me started. But this detail in particular gave us some important context about Tam Amber's relative age as well, and his degree of first-hand living memory of the Covey before the war, while they were still living their transient life, which that really wasn't made super clear in the in Ballad. It is mentioned. He does they're talking about, how they used to live, and he does, one of his two lines is saying, we also went north. So that could be taken as him remembering, but I think in the context, it's more so understood as him just knowing a thing that we used to do, even if he was a small child. No, this tells us, specifically, that he was about Haymitch's age when the war was happening. Quote, I always thought if one of us shook free of 12, it would be Lenore Dove. Her people were great travelers once, going from district to district to perform their music. Tam Amber remembers it, as he was about my age when the war ended and the peacekeepers rounded up the Covey, killing all the adults and confining the kids to our district. Nothing Lenore Dove loves better than those stories of the old days, with her kin rattling around in a broken-down pickup. They still had vehicles accessible to the public. Very interesting detail there. When fuel got scarce, they resorted to hitching it up to a team of horses. By the time they were herded into 12, the team was pulling an old wagon, and most of them were on foot, but they were making it work. Cooking over open fires, rolling into towns, playing in warehouses like the Hob, or fields if none were available, famous in their way to the locals. And then perhaps most critically, we learn that Tam Amber's profession did not end up being that of the goat man, as many had speculated after Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes was released. Instead, he essentially becomes a metalsmith. She digs in her pocket and holds out a small package wrapped in a scrap of dove-colored fabric, tied with a ribbon about the same dappled green as her eyes. Happy birthday! Tam Amber made it. I traded eggs for the metal and helped him design it. Besides playing a crazy good mandolin, Tam Amber's the best hand forger in District 12. He's the go-to blacksmith for new gadgets or broken parts for old machines. Burdock has a dozen of his arrow tips that he treats like gold. Keep that line in mind, we're going to talk about it later. And some of the richer folks in town have jewelry he made from actual gold or silver, melted down from heirlooms and refashioned. I can't think what he'd make for me, but I eagerly untie the bow. The object that slips into my palm doesn't register at once. It's a thin strip of metal shaped like a C. My fingers naturally grip the curved back as I examine the colorful animals facing off at the opening. The head of a snake hisses at the beak of a long-necked bird. I flatten out my hand and see that their enameled scales and feathers travel around the piece until they merge and become indistinguishable. 2 small rings are welded on, one behind each head. For a chain, maybe? It's beautiful, I say. To wear, right? Well, you know I like my pretty with purpose, Lenore Dove replies cryptically, making me work it out myself. I turn it over in my hand, then grip the C again, this time covering the animal heads with my fingers. Then I see its purpose. The smooth steel edge isn't solely decorative. It's a flint striker, I conclude. I run my finger over the fine metalwork of the feathered neck. I wouldn't want to ruin it. You won't. That's what it's made for. She touches the snake's head and the bird's in turn. It takes a lot to break these two. They're survivors. But it's not even like just Hamish's beautiful flint striker. Tam Amber is also revealed to be the creator of the other critical symbol that is used to show defiance against the Capitol and the games. Lenore Dove told me that on their 13th birthday, he gave them pure gold pins that had belonged to his mother. They'd been fashioned by Tam Amber over 30 years ago. I never saw them, but Merrilies featured a hummingbird and Maisley's a mockingjay. Birds being one of the Covey's greatest loves. Apparently, Merrily wore hers for all of 5 minutes before she lost it down a well. Maisley threw a fit over hers, saying a mockingjay was an ugly old thing, and why couldn't Tam Amber melt it down and make her something pretty, like a butterfly? When he declined, she stuffed the pin in the back of a drawer and never wore it once. Guys, do you think seeing Katniss wear it was the first time he saw it? This is literally just occurring to me in this very moment as I'm recording it, and I'm gonna cry. Guys, was that the first time he saw it? It was when his sweetheart put it on. And he'd already called her sweetheart by that point, and he would have known what it was. I don't know if he knew that she was friends with Madge, but I mean, there aren't many. He would have known that Tam Amber made it. Oh, that just broke my heart. See, more tears being shed over Tam Amber. Guys, I love him so much. Diving into the literature, now that we know quite a bit about Tam Amber, he got his name from the child ballad number 39, Tam Lin. I'm just going to say it now. There are like 8 million different spelling and pronunciation variations of this name, and I have read so many variations of this ballad in the last couple of weeks that honestly, they're going to come out however. All right, we got Tam Lin, we got Tam Lin, we got Tam Lane, Tam Lean, Tomlin, Tam Bling, etc. There are so many versions, but all are acceptable in the canon. The ballad first appeared in written form on a broadside in 1549, but the story itself is the oral remnant of a far older tale than even the 16th century. It's also one of only a few of the child ballads that have any type of like inhuman or fae-based pagan elements in it. Not to say that there isn't like what's the word I'm looking for? Supernatural elements, because so many of the child ballads have supernatural elements in the sense that like people come back from the dead to have a conversation and then they die. There's that type of stuff. There's not really like, ooh, fairies. And this one is like a ooh, fairies type of story. So in many versions of the ballad, Tam Lin is considered to be some type of like elven being, which number one makes the description of what he looks like in Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes as being like this tall, raw-boned person, and he's wearing like a feathered hat, even more interesting. But then there's also this quote from, again, Walter Scott's Minstrelsy of the Scottish Border. I have a really hard time saying that word, guys. All the more interesting. In his incredibly long introduction to his collected version of the ballad, he writes, "The word elf, which seems to have been the original name of the beings afterwards dominated by fairies, is of Gothic origin and probably signified simply as a spirit of a lower order. Thus, the Saxons had not only Dun Elfin, Herg Elfin, and Munt Elfin, spirits of the downs, hills, and mountains, but also Feld Elfin, Wudu Elfin, Say Elfin, and Woda Elfin, spirits of the fields, of the woods, of the sea, and of the waters." Additionally, he asserts his belief that elven beings have a particular talent for all things mechanical. Quote, "Their attributes, amongst which we recognize the features of the modern fairy, were supernatural wisdom and prescience, and a skill in the mechanical arts, especially in the fabrication of arms. The triangular flints frequently found in Scotland, with which the ancient inhabitants probably barbed their shafts, are supposed to be the weapons of fairy resentment and are termed elf arrowheads. The rude brazen battle axes of the ancients, commonly called salts, are also ascribed to their manufacture." So these elves of a place are also really good at manufacturing metal things like arrow tips. So I'm about to tell you like the actual story of Tamlin, but I would like to remind you that this is a very old story that has been told many different ways. I kid you not, I have read probably 60 versions of this ballad in the past 2.5 weeks. So I'm going to tell it to you now, but I'm going to tell it to you how I want to tell it to you. My own interpretation. I'm going to be cherry picking and taking pieces from as many versions as I please in telling the story that I want to tell, the things that resonated with me across all of the versions. So this is my fair warning to you that what I'm going to tell you is not any one specific one, and if you are a child ballad 39A or Walter Scott Tamlin purist, I doubt any of you are, you may or may not even know what I'm talking about, this isn't for you, but this is for the rest of us, okay? Oral storytelling tradition. I'm making it up. I'm not actually. I'm reforming as it pleases me. The Ballad of Tamlin begins with our young heroine, Janet, who has been warned that she must never visit her father's woods of Carterhaugh, for danger awaits her there in the form of a wild shade. Janet does not heed this warning, which, understandable. Somebody says, don't go there. You're gonna kind of want to go there. Janet does not heed this warning, instead donning a green cloak and going quickly on her way so as not to be seen by anybody. Once among the trees, she begins to pluck the flowers and herbs that surround her, but within moments, her gathering is interrupted by Tamlin asking why she has come. She hadn't pulled a rose, but only one, when then appeared him, young Tamlin, says Lady Let Alone. What makes you pull the rose? What makes you break the tree? What makes you come to Carterhaugh without the leave of me? Carterhaugh is not your own, and roses there are many. I'll come and go all as I please, and not ask leave of any. Earl Murray was my sire, Earl March, Janet, is thine. We loved when we were children small, which yet you may well mind. Bold as brass he takes her hand, and color rises to her skin. She looks the young man in the eye, and knows him now for young Tamlin. Oh, he's taken her by the middle small, down to where the grass grows so green, and what they've done I could not say, the flowers growing in between. So Janet recognizes Tamlin from when they were young, reuniting now as joyous lovers. She wants him to follow her out of the wood to get married, but he reveals that he has been trapped and held prisoner there since she saw him last, and they are forced to part. Tamlin has been living for years now as a type of elven fae, not quite human and not quite fully alive. Janet asks Tamlin, my love, why is it in these woods you hide? The Queen of Fairies stole me here when I was but a child. And it's once on every dreaded year we pay a toll to hell, and the last one here is the first to go. I fear the toll has rung my bell. So Janet leaves the woods and goes back home, but soon realizes that she is pregnant, and this catches the attention of her family, forcing her to then make a choice. She knows what such a birth would mean and understands the couple's circumstances. She's not going to get this happy ending that she hopes for. It's not something she believes is in the cards. All the ladies of the court at their play turn red as rose, except for Janet, fainting fast, green as growing grass she goes. Out then speaks her father dear, doting, caring, meek and mild. Janet, darling, daughter mine, I fear you go with child. Father, if I be with child, be sure myself shall bear the blame. There's not a knight within your hall shall get the baby's name. So she races back to Carterhaugh to speak with Tamlin, having made up her mind that she really can't do this if it means doing it alone. She is down among the weeds, down among the thorns, and then appeared Tamlin again, says Janet, pull no more. What makes you pull the poison rose? What makes you break the tree? What makes you harm the little babe that I have got with thee? If he were to a gentleman, and not a wild shade, I'd rock him all the winter's night, and all the summer's day. Then take me back into your arms, if you my love would win, and hold me tight, and fear me not, I'll be your gentleman. So, she was going to abort the child. He's like, we can do this. We can figure it out because I want this too. I know our circumstances aren't ideal, but we're going to find a way to fight through them. So he then lays out a plan so that she may free him and they can live their life together. But he warns her of the danger and the pain that is going to come to them both, no matter what, if they even attempt it. Even if they succeed, they are going to have to experience this terrible thing. So basically, the fairy court is going to be riding by that night, and what she needs to do is locate Tam Lin, pull him off his horse, and then hold him to her chest as he is transformed from beast to beast, never letting go, no matter how bad it gets or how afraid she is. He promises that if she can hold on and trust him, he will return to her. I'm going to use the Anais Mitchell excerpt for this specific section, and yes, that is the person who wrote Hadestown. Please don't forget to check out the playlist I made. Tam Lin specifically has the best musical adaptations. There are so many of them. They vary so much. There's so many different genres. There's so many interpretations. It's actually such like a rich story with so many versions of it. Highly recommend. Don't forget to check out the playlist, okay?
Oh, I will pull the bush, he says, and I will pull the tree, and I will be at Carter's shade, and ask no leave of thee, my love. I will ask no leave of thee. Just the same as 10 years before, torn from my bed by the midst of the storm, by a woman whose name we don't speak in this town, where the bones of her lovers get cut on the ground.
I forbid you maidens on the gold in your hair travel to Carter Hall, for young Tam Lin is there.
So I'm going to use her specifically. However, I'm going to say that in other versions, Tam Lin is transformed into other beings that are even more relevant to the series and the symbolism that we're familiar with in the Hunger Games, including a dove, a swan, a beast, a snake, a spark, a red-hot iron, and a roaring flame. So just keep that in mind. These aren't the only things he's transformed into. Just at the murk and midnight hour, the elfin fae will ride, and they that would their true love win, pull me from my horse and hide. But first I'll change all in your arms into a wild wolf, but hold me tight and fear me not, I am your own true love. And then I'll change all in your arms into a wild bear, but hold me tight and fear me not, I am your husband, dear. And then I'll change all in your arms into a lion bold, but hold me tight and fear me not, and you will love your child. So they move forward with their plan. Tam Lin is changed into all of these awful things, and Janet never does let go. She holds on to him until eventually Tam Lin is finally released from this inhuman state, becoming a mortal man once again.
At first he changed all in her arms into a wild wolf. She held him tight and feared him not. He was her own true love, and then he changed all in her arms into a wild bear. She held him tight and feared him not. He was her husband, dear, and then he changed all in her arms into a lion wolf. She held him tight and feared him not, the father of her child. And then he changed all in her arms into a naked man. She's wrapped him in a coat so warm, and she's brought him home.
So how does all of this relate to Tam Amber as a character? I was chewing on all of this for days, and honestly, my mind kept coming back to the lyrics from A Burning Hill by Mitski, in which she sings,
And I've been a forest fire, I am a forest fire,
watching it, and you are not there at all.
In my own interpretation of the ballad, Tam Amber does not just fit into the role of Tam Lin, although he does that too. I feel like Tam Amber represents the full trinity. Tam Amber is Tam Lin, who was trapped and held hostage by an unjust authority when the Covey were rounded up and forced to settle down within the districts. His culture and his way of life is restricted further and further as the years go by, changing as is necessary to survive. But Tam Amber is also the child whose life and future is being fought for. He is the literal baby that was found along the edge of the wood, who is innocent and alone until the Covey take him in. And then Tam Amber is also Janet, who is fighting for his family's right to exist in a world without fear or doubt. He clutches tightly to the belief in this future throughout it all. He's the only one among the Covey, besides Lenore Dove, who believe that there is still a life beyond Panem. In the books, this mention is in reference to a life beyond its physical borders, but I believe it's also representative of a life beyond the capital's rule. Even when there is doubt, and even when there is failure, and even when there's tragedy, he clutches to this hope and trust that one day this tyranny will end. And in his arms, this hope does change from a snake and a songbird in the form of Lucy Gray to a lion, Hamish, a brave and fierce protector who survives the lion's den against all odds, though he couldn't protect those that he set out to. And then it changes into a dove, his dove, and a swan with Katniss. It turns from the flint striker's spark to a flame that he himself forged when his own work becomes the very symbol of the future that he believes in. And finally, it turns into a naked man once more when the war ends and they have found their peace. There's this really fantastic website called tamlin.org that has so many collected resources around the ballad's many iterations that I used as a starting point of the content in this section. It is a little bit out of date at this point since I don't think it's been updated since 2015. It was started in 1997, so shout out for the 18 years of updates. But I found this really excellent piece of commentary on there, which only enhances this type of conversation. Quote, "In the many versions of Tam Lin, Janet is pregnant at the time of her rescue of Tam Lin. It may not be enough that she is brave or that she loves him, but that she must also be with child. The transformations that he goes through are varied and strange, but many end with Tam Lin in her arms, naked, perhaps after a baptism, at least symbolically reborn. Most versions also instruct her to cover him in her mantle, and while this is traditionally a sign of protection, it can also be seen as a swaddling of sorts. At least one version has Tam Lin completing his transformations by passing through Janet's dress and coming out the lower hem. One visitor to the site has compared the last transformation into a burning object to the sensation experienced by a woman when a baby's head presses through the vagina. A few authors have suggested that Tam Lin is not so much being rescued by Janet as being born by her." I'm gonna cry again. This new world, the new world that he believed in, that literally exists because of the symbols that he had a hand in creating, because of the hope that he believed in and that he passed on to others, and that just it possesses every nook and cranny of the story. It's the only reason that they get any. I'm literally about to cry again. I love him so much. I really do. And I love the story so much. So that's the ballad. And we still have to talk about the color. So Amber. Okay. The color itself evokes feelings of like warmth, whether that's golden hour, like the sunlight, or maybe it's whiskey traveling down to your belly, that like hot burning feeling. But it tends to represent like happiness, healing, optimism, safety, warmth. It reminds us of like the life-giving energy of the sun. But I think more so than the color amber, we tend to think about the, what do I even call it? It's not a stone. It's fossilized tree resin. But amber as like a gemstone. It's at least like used as a gemstone. And I liked this deepened tie to the idea of Tamlin essentially being a wood elf, like that's what he represents, and then also the fact that the forest beyond the district border is that life-giving force throughout the whole series. It sustains the people of District 12, whether directly, like Katniss and Gale and the Covey, or even indirectly, like the many people, the peacekeepers who buy the things that they're poaching, right? All of that would already be great on its own. But you know what else I learned about Amber? Its name derives from the ancient Greek word electron. Yeah, that is exactly what it sounds like, and it's actually where the word electricity comes from. Amber can generate and maintain static electricity and is one of the earliest observed examples of electricity. In every single way, I truly believe that we have Tam Amber to thank for the many sparks throughout the series that eventually turn into the flames that burn through the corruption and the tyranny. So then as we wrap up this section, before we get to my surprise, let's revisit the instrumental song that I mentioned earlier. I was initially going to dismiss this song as an unnecessary inclusion and cut it from the discussion because I was like, I'm just talking about myself, it's not important. But then two things happened in one serendipitous moment. As I was working on the outline for this video, I dove back into the text to try to get a glimpse of whether or not it was possible that Tam Amber lived to see the end of the war. I really wanted him to have lived to see the end of the war. And as I did so, right, I was reading the part of Mockingjay where Katniss discusses District 12's culture around music and dance and the lone fiddler that plays at Annie and Fiddick's wedding. As I was reading that part, I had my playlist of songs going, and an instrumental version of the Tamlin reel comes on, and I quite literally burst into tears. I burst into tears, okay? Because while it is primarily, the version that I was listening to, while it is primarily fiddle focused, there is a mandolin that fades in and out of the background in accompaniment. And it's I was reading about how they, carried on this culture and they didn't forget it, and then I'm hearing Tamlin's reel, but it's a fiddle, and Clerk Carmine is playing the fiddle. There's a teeny tiny possibility that Tam Amber survived, but it's so incredibly unlikely for so many factors that I'm not even gonna get into it beyond saying he would have had to be 92. He didn't make it. But even when his body is gone, his spirit is carried on by the people who remember him. Both his personhood, like Haymitch and Clerk Carmine do, and Clerk Carmine who continues to literally carry his tune, but then also to the hundreds of thousands who clutched onto the hope that he represented, that his symbol, the pin forged from his hands, represented. And they held it to their chest, and they didn't let it go until the war was won. And I'm fucking crying again. I just love oral storytelling traditions. And I love the Hunger Games, and I love these characters and all of the things that they represent. And I mean, it's just really good stuff, guys. I really fucking love Tam Amber. Tam Amber is definitely my favorite Covey member now. I love him so much. Okay. I'm done with all of the main content of this, so I'm gonna... Okay. We made it, guys. If you have made it this far into the video, thank you for sticking around, and I'm about to share that surprise that I promised. But before I do that, I do have to give you the little spiel again. Like, subscribe, leave a comment, let me know all of your thoughts, etc. If you enjoyed this video, it really helps me. Okay, do that. But without further ado, I offer to you my offering. That's not a good way to phrase it. But without further ado, I offer unto you a new ballad. child brought up between his arms, a child sprung from his well. 10 lanes response rings deep and wide. I knew your father, dear. Take from my riches all you need, for you are welcome here. But in return I must forewarn that there will come a day, a burden unto you will fall. There is no other way. So in that dread dark creeping cave, the archer made a deal with death. It could claim her as it pleased, so long it spared the rest. But death it does not deals make. Reason it is without. It will take and take and take. Of that there is no And in the cold the archer comes. She calls out for Tam. Give her shelter from the snow and from his icy rain. Archer, I cannot you see. I've told you once before. Within your palm you hold a key. You must open the door. Beyond it all your love does wait. It will be your reward. But trials they will not abate. The wise Tam conferred. Hope will turn to snakes, you see, and slither up between your eyes. But hold it tight and fear it not, for fear will make you blind. And hope will turn into a lion. And you are in the lion's den. But hold it tight and fear it not, you'll find your fight again. And hope will turn into a beast, and your lover will betray. But hold him tight and fear him not, your love's not gone away. And hope will turn into a bird. From your wings it will trees. And it took years, but there they were. Her yellow love and grasses green. So underneath time lane's wide shade, the archer found her peace. The war is done, the games are up, she has her family.